Hey, what are you doing here? Don't you know? Games are the new fad on Rolling Ridge. You should check them out too. This is Legendary Adventures, a Legend of Zelda playthrough podcast. This week in Oracle of Ages, we're making some trades and going to the Goron Games. Am I a good dancer? No, I'm not. Before we start dancing, however, let's tackle a couple of side activities. I used Gale Seeds to fast travel back to Lina City. While there, I bought a shield because a like ate mine. I also took some time to travel back to the past. I knew there was a kid somewhere within Lina that was in a dark house because he was depressed. I didn't find him in the present during my last trip to the city, and it clicked with me that I should check the past. Sure enough, he is there in a home on the east bank of the river. The boy tells us that he wants to laugh until he forgets his troubles. We tell him the funny joke. Link is incredibly animated while he tells the joke, squashing and stretching and posing as he tells a lengthy and elaborate joke. The kid lets out a single chuckle, then sarcastically says he forgot to laugh. He thanks Link and says that he can be depressed as he wants to be. He gives Link the touching book. We're told it's a sad story. After getting the book, I return to Rolling Ridge. While moving around Rolling Ridge, I ran into Maple. This time, the book that we got from the depressed kid flies out of Link's pocket. Maple sees the book and says that she must take it to the witch Syrup. She mentioned on our first meeting that she was looking for a book, but I actually completely forgot about it. Giving her the book was pure luck on my part. Maple reads the book, which brings her to tears. She gives us a magic ore she made herself, letting us know that, sadly, Syrup never complimented it. Poor Maple. There's a new tunnel right next to the tunnel we used to get to the Crown Dungeon in the last episode. A Goron broke through the wall and formed this door while the Maku Tree was talking to Link following the Crown Dungeon. The tunnel leads to the east side of the ridge, where we find a second Goron settlement. And as promised, the Gorons on the east side of the ridge are crazy about games. This section sees us playing through a series of mini-games in order to get keys needed to open the dungeon. Yes, keys. There are 2. I found this to be the most frustrating sequence in the entire game. We must complete a series of mini-games in order to get items for a localized trading quest. Director Hidemaru Fujibayashi seems to disagree with me. In an interview that originally appeared in Nintendo's online magazine, he was asked what he thought the highlight of the Oracle series was. Fujibayashi responded, "This title was built upon the whole team's personality. The highlight would be the many events and mini-games as well as the dungeon gimmicks." I can't disagree really with the dungeon gimmicks, at least so far, but I would say that the mini-games of this section largely fell flat for me. On the bottom level of East Rolling Ridge, we find the Goron Dance. This is the first and last minigame of the sequence. It's also, in my opinion, the worst of the lot. I hated it. A 5th generation graceful Goron leads the dance. It's sort of a Simon Says-like game. We use the A and B buttons to strike poses. The graceful Goron performs a pattern of poses and we must repeat it back in the same order following the same rhythm. There are a number of poses made, but it doesn't matter what the pose looks like. What matters is the sound. This is all explained in the instructions, but I really didn't get it at first. I was noticing the different poses made and I wondered if I was actually supposed to be pushing other buttons in addition to A and B. But no, only those 2 buttons are used. We must get through 8 rounds. We can fail up to 3 rounds and still pass the minigame. It took me many tries, but I finally managed to muddle my way through a full dance. As a reward, we get the Brother Emblem, a symbol of Goron Brotherhood, granting Link membership to the tribe. This is the second time Link was made a member of the Goron tribe following Ocarina of Time, where he was made a sworn brother of the chief Darunia. With the emblem, we can access more of the Goron settlement on East Rolling Ridge. The guard of the stairs to the upper level comes from a long line of guards. He tells us that he is hungry and wants some food. This is the first clue for the trading sequence. Traveling between the past and the present, we will find games on the middle level of the Goron settlement. In the present, there is a minecart game on this level. We ride a minecart and use the seed shooter to break large rupees. I found this to be the most fun of all the minigames, and I didn't mind the multiple tries it took me to get it right. The prize is a rock brisket, just the thing to give to a hungry Goron. In the same location of the minecart game, but in the past, we find the same batting cage game that we found in Lena Village. We need to finish this game with a score of 100 or more. We get lava juice as a prize for completing that game. It took me 2 tries to claim the prize. Returning to the present and on the lower level, we give the guard the rock brisket. He gives us his heirloom vase. His ancestor guarding the same door in the past is looking for an heirloom to pass down to his descendants. We travel back to the past and give this vase to the guard. He gives us Goronade. The Goronade is an energy drink, and this is what a Goron in the present on the top level of the settlement needs to get his game started. It's a game where we must avoid bombs that are thrown into an arena of shifting sand. This was my second favorite minigame. It took me many tries and I felt robbed of victory on a couple of those tries, but I didn't hate it. The prize is the Mermaid key, one of 2 keys needed for the dungeon. It took me a while to figure out who to give the lava juice to. There is a blue Goron on the lower level in the past. He prophesies that Link will give something hot to a friend of the graceful dancer. His friend is up on the top floor. In exchange for the lava juice, he gives us a letter of introduction to the graceful Goron. Between all these minigames, I kept returning to the graceful Goron of the past. He runs the second dancing minigame. The graceful Goron obviously has the second mermaid key. I tried to complete his game multiple times and failed every time. After getting the letter of introduction, I returned for the final time, and I spent about 5 minutes trying and retrying the dancing game. Finally, I was able to complete it and got the other mermaid key. It was super annoying, but now we can move on to the dungeon. Although before we do, I just want to note something real quick first. Outside the Goron settlement on East Rolling Ridge, there is a small tree we can burn away. Inside, we can find an old man who charges us for burning away that tree in order to repair his door. It's a callback to the original Legend of Zelda, where players could similarly be trolled by an old man who charged us to fix a tree-shaped door that we burned away. The music of Mermaid's Cave is anchored by an arpeggio on the high notes. Over top is a rising melody in the mid-range. It's short, lasting about 15 seconds before looping over again. At first I felt it created a nice creepy tone for the dungeon, but it didn't take long for me to find it more grating than pleasant. Mermaid Cave is the only dungeon in the game to make use of the game's time-traveling mechanic. In that way, it is somewhat similar to the Spirit Temple in Ocarina of Time. Both dungeons are tackled in multiple parts split between the 2 timelines. A dungeon split into multiple parts is a concept we've seen played out only occasionally in the series. I've more or less pegged Hyrule Castle and A Link to the Past as the first of these dungeons. The Spirit Temple is the second, and between those 2 dungeons it's the most analogous to Mermaid Cave. The Spirit Temple was split into 2 distinct parts, one part in the past as young Link, and one part in the future as adult Link. There was only a single room in common between the 2 sides of the dungeon, and we had to exit the dungeon and travel through time to tackle each side. Mermaid's Cave is tackled in 3 parts. There's also some differences in the overall layout of the dungeon, including its shape between the past and the present. We will have to exit the dungeon and travel through time to visit each part. I started the dungeon by visiting the past. During this time, the dungeon is split into 2 floors, a ground level floor and a basement level. The ground floor is shaped like most of a mermaid. It has most of the tail, minus the fin, the body and the head, minus the hair. The basement level features the mermaid's ponytail and tail fin. I started by heading into the tail. We reach it by breaking a hole in the wall with a bomb. The tail is largely flooded and contains the dungeon map. We are prevented from reaching the basement level by some extra deep water. Link cannot swim through it even though he has the flippers. I then headed up into the body. The compass is found in the belly. We get a key in the arm, and we make our way to the head, where another pool of extra deep water stops us. There's no way to proceed, so we exit the dungeon and travel to the present. In the present, the dungeon is limited to a single floor in the full mermaid shape. It looks like both floors from the past are combined. This time we start by heading up into the body. We find a key in the stomach, another map in the room just above it, and a second key in the arm. There are also 2 turnstiles in the head. We go through one to reach the ponytail and find the mini-boss. It's a Vyre. This Vyre tells us he's a loyal henchman of Varan. Vyre flies off-screen, spitting dark energy balls at Link. It moves quickly. I found it tricky to land hits at first. I tried using the seed shooter, but that didn't work. I also tried baiting Vyre with scent seeds, and that also did not work. Eventually, I was able to land enough hits with the sword to cause Vyre to transform into 2 bats. Defeating the bats ends the fight. Vyre flees and leaves behind a fairy and a portal to the entrance. In the tip of the ponytail, we find the dungeon item, the mermaid suit. This allows us to swim in that extra deep water. It also completely changes how Link moves through water. The hint text tries to explain this, but I didn't pick up on it at first. I was thrown off when I first entered the water after getting the mermaid suit. We need to tap the direction that we want to move in. We can dive with the B button and use items with the A button. Those items are more or less limited to the seed shooter and the switch hook. We pick up a third key in the head by navigating through the turnstiles. The boss key is in the tail fin. We need to use 2 keys and the switch hook to get it. After getting the boss key, we return to the past. With the mermaid suit, we can now explore the deep water in the tail and the head. The lower floors are completely flooded as we swim through them, and there's a nice effect in these underwater areas where the screen ripples. Both areas contain a key to collect. On the other side of the deep water in the head, we spend a key to reach a room with the boss door. To reach the door, we first need to use the seed shooter to extend a bridge. That involves pressing down a floor switch to open a pair of barriers, which we can then bounce a seed through to hit a crystal switch. This one took me a second to figure out. We need to place a Cane of Samaria block on the floor switch. First, I tried to have Link stand on the switch and tried to bounce the seed off the block, but that didn't work. It makes more sense with the actual solution. Once we extend the bridge, we can move on to face the boss. The boss is a giant octopus called Octogon. Very punny. This fight takes place both above and below water, and not in the bad way it did when fighting Georg in Majora's Mask. We need to hit Octogon with seeds from the seed shooter. It starts with its head above water, this is the weak spot, and we can shoot Octogon no problem. Eventually it dives underwater. We can follow it underwater and take the fight to the boss. It took me 2 tries to complete this fight. My problem was I kept hitting the wrong button when in the water and I would surface on accident. I couldn't begin to tell you why I did that. In the second round, I actually had things figured out enough to defeat Octogon and get the heart container and the next essence. It's the Bereft Peak. We're told it's a proud and lonely spirit that remains stalwart even in trying times. The Maku tree then directs us to the castle, saying we have a chance to rescue Nehru. Will we be successful in freeing Nehru from Varan's grasp? We'll find out next week. If you want to follow along, please subscribe. A big thank you to everyone who has subscribed already. I'd never imagined I'd have as many people following along with this podcast as I do, so really thank you. I'm Paul Riley, and I will see you next week.